More migrants are entering Southern California processing centers with Title 42 expiring. The concerns over resources. A drain on your brain. Why you may want to rethink where you put your cell phone when you're trying to be productive. You're watching The Rundown. Hello, everyone. I'm Robin Winston. Title 42 has officially expired. Now, all eyes are on the border. This is what it looks like near San Diego. You can see people have been camping out in cold temperatures, some for several days. Now that appointments to apply for asylum have reopened, the Department of Homeland Security is reiterating the border is not open. We now move back to Title 8, a policy that was in place for decades before the pandemic. The penalties for crossing the border are more severe. If a migrant is removed under Title 8, they are banned from entering the U.S. for 5 years. They could also face jail or prison time. Southern California communities are getting ready to take in more migrants, but officials are concerned about the already skyrocketing number of migrants coming into the processing centers. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection has 3 offices in Riverside County. So far, they've accepted more than 75,000 migrants, and more are on the way. But officials tell us about a month ago, Riverside County was receiving about 50 to 60 migrants a day. But recently, it spiked to about 200 migrants per day. And with the expiration of Title 42, the fear is that the number will rise even more dramatically.
We have a finite number of beds and shelters, and so that is something that is a potential concern. If it were to continue to increase, if it were to double or triple, then we would be at capacity very quickly.
The Southern California processing centers will provide food and shelter as transition locations, while travel plans are being arranged for migrants to be connected with their sponsors in the country. Scammers are looking to take advantage of your love for mom this Mother's Day. The Better Business Bureau has a list of accredited florists in our area. They recommend checking it out before buying Mother's Day flowers to make sure you're not buying from a place that ends up being a fraudulent business. Something to think about. The Better Business Bureau also recommends leaving electronics in the original packaging just in case you need to return them. If you're shopping for jewelry, consider going to a store near you. And gift cards are very popular, but just make sure you check them carefully to ensure someone did not tamper with it to steal your money. Meteorologist Belinda Leon is tracking your Mother's Day weekend forecast, and it's looking pretty good.
Hi there. Well, here's what you could expect over the next several days. We've been talking about a warming trend, and it's really going to unfold over Mother's Day weekend. The temperatures inland will feel like summer, highs in the 80s and 90s. And next week, there's not going to be much of a relief when it comes to the temperatures. Those will stay warm. The difference is that we will have humidity increasing as an early season monsoon pattern develops. Now, Mother's Day forecast is going to be nice at the coast, 72, 81 for the basin in Orange County, starting off with some fog and gradually getting sunny. Inland, it's going to be toasty. We'll have 90s for the valleys, the IE, the high desert 92, and in the mountains 71. Now let's talk about next week, because that's when we're going to see that moisture increasing from the west. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is when we have that chance for some mountain storms in the mountains. The monsoon typically develops during early summer, but here we are in May. Next week, we're going to have to keep an eye to the sky with a chance for storms.
New developments about the chokehold death of a homeless man on a New York subway. The former Marine who held him down turned himself into police. Daniel Penny is expected to face a manslaughter charge. Penny's attorney says his client acted in self-defense because he and other riders were being aggressively threatened by Jordan Neely. Penny can be seen holding Neely in a chokehold, which killed him. His death has triggered protests and calls for criminal charges. Candlelight visuals for Neely are also being held here in L.A. First responders who worked to save lives during the Monterey Park mass shooting were honored. In all, 20 people were shot during a Lunar New Year celebration. 10 victims died at the scene and many others were seriously wounded. Monterey Park's fire chief got emotional when talking about what his firefighters witnessed that night.
I can say that I still have 2 firefighters that are off because of this incident. I get emotional.
Chief Hollick went on to recognize the neighboring fire and police departments that jumped in to help. He says their efforts likely saved a lot of lives. A man is recovering at home after getting shot while trying to help a woman under attack. So the fight broke out last weekend just outside of El Compadre restaurant in Hollywood. A bystander heard the argument and went to intervene. He says that's when he was shot in the stomach and hospitalized for 5 days.
He was in the car hitting the girl. I didn't see, but he had already raised the gun up to here and it was turning around and doing one of these. And when I noticed that, I reached over and I grabbed the gun and I pulled it all the way down. I pushed it all the way down. And as it went down towards my lower abdomen, he fired a shot, which hit me.
The victim says the shooter drove off in a white Mercedes with the injured woman. So far, no arrests have been made. The YouTuber whose small plane crashed in the Los Padres National Forest has now admitted that he crashed it on purpose for a sponsorship deal. Trevor Jacob could face up to 20 years in prison. In this video posted back in 2021, you can see Jacob jumping from the plane as it crashes into the mountains. According to the plea agreement, he intended to use the video to promote a company that made wallets. Jacob is also accused of lying to the FAA about not knowing where the wreckage was, when in reality, he had it towed and thrown away. His lawyer declined to comment. There's still no end in sight for the Hollywood writers' strike. Here's a look at the picketers gathered outside CBS Radford Center in Studio City Thursday. Deadline is reporting that a film permit requests in the city and county of LA plummeted 51% in the first week of the strike. The last strike back in 2007 cost the industry nearly $1 billion.
The truth of it is, as we told them from the start, this is not a normal negotiation. We have real problems affecting the real livelihoods of everyday writers that need to be addressed.
No new talks at the bargaining table have been scheduled. Comcast, the corporation that owns our parent company, NBC Universal, is one of the entertainment companies represented by the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. Also, some employees of the NBC News Group are represented by the WGA. A new change to Lyft services. The company says they are getting rid of their signature shared rides feature. Lyft had stopped pooled rides during the pandemic and had gradually introduced them back last year. But now they are discontinuing those shared rides. The CEO says those rides often took people far away from where they wanted to go before eventually getting them home or to their destination. Instead, the company is now focusing on making airport pickups faster and more convenient. Turning off our cell phones or putting them on silent seems like a good idea to avoid distraction. But a new study shows the mere presence of our phones can be taking up our time and attention, which makes it harder to work and complete tasks. NBC's Un Yang tells us what you can do to avoid the pitfalls.
Family, friends, and the news. But researchers say the mere presence of our phones can cause brain drain, whether they're on or even off.
We were surprised because most of the research on attention would suggest that if people are not being consciously distracted, so if they're not looking away at their phones, they should be able to perform. But it seems as if just merely having it there still occupies resources.
Kristen Duke is with the University of Toronto and says during the experiment, participants were separated into 3 different groups.
They either left their phones in the lobby in a separate room from where they would be participating in our experiment, or they brought their phones with them and carried them however they naturally carry them. So for some participants, this was in their pockets. For others, this was in a bag. And then the third group of participants, we asked them to put their phones out on their desk in front of them.
Then each group was given a task and tested on how well they could focus and problem solve.
We wanted to see if having your smartphone in your vicinity compared to having it in a separate room, out of view and out of sight and out of mind, might impact people's performance on these 2 different types of tasks. We found that the location itself mattered. So people were most affected when their smartphone was visible. So when it's out on the desk in front of you, that is essentially the strongest cue to remind you of your phone and sort of have these negative consequences.
What's more surprising, researchers say, that even when the phone was lying face down with notifications silenced or turned off completely, just the presence of it had an impact on a person's cognitive capacity, making it harder for them to process and remember information and problem solve.
We find that people are sort of unconsciously always attending to the possibility of their phone needing their attention, and the requirement to sort of override that impulse to check and see if you have a notification or sort of prevent yourself from being distracted.
So what are we supposed to do? Researchers say you can start by carving out time each day away from your phone or setting it aside in a different room while you're working.
Plan to have these sort of defined and protected periods of time. Myself as well, I started this project where I would be working on my computer and have my phone off to the side. Didn't think anything about it, and these results have actually changed how I think about how I interact with my phone and other technology as well.
Eun Yang, NBC News.
People have been fighting to keep a community garden in Compton, and the founder is now hopeful it can be saved. Well, this small piece of land was turned into a garden 10 years ago, and now the founder says it produces enough fresh vegetables to fill a grocery store every 2 weeks. A developer made an offer on the land, which would force the garden out. But now the founder says they've raised almost enough money to compete with that offer. He says the land owner is giving them more time as donations continue to come in. 2 police officers answered a call to what they said sounded like cries for help. Well, it turns out that was a bad call.
Does it go? It is. Yeah, from a long distance, sounds like help.
What is going on? The officers were following what they thought was a person yelling for help, but they realized that their damsel in distress was just a very upset goat. The farmer said the goat was upset that he had been separated from one of his friends. I'd be upset too. Friends have to stick together, right? You can always get news and weather updates on the NBCLA app and our website, NBCLA.com. And be sure to tune into Today in LA on NBC4 weekdays, 4 to 7 a.m. I'll be helping you get around with traffic reports throughout the morning commute. I'll see you next time on The Rundown.